The sunlight spilled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office, painting the polished wood desk in golden streaks. I adjusted my silk blouse, smoothing the wrinkles with fingers that had memorized the texture of determination long before the fabric ever touched my skin. My phone buzzed again, another reminder that the world expected me to be nothing less than in control. I didn't answer right away. There was a hesitation that only came with the knowledge that some calls carried ghosts. This one? From Mom.
And Dad.
My parents. The same people who had dismissed my dreams of starting my own business 5 years ago. I took a slow breath, letting the scent of my morning coffee anchor me. The city buzzed beneath me, oblivious to the storm of thoughts swirling in my head. Pride mixed with a bitter sweetness. I had made it, but the wound from their rejection was still faintly raw. A memory flashed unbidden, their faces, polite but incredulous, as I outlined my first business plan. "It's too risky," Dad had said. "You need stability," Mom had insisted. And I had left, furious and heartbroken, yet unwilling to give up. Now, sitting behind a desk they could only have dreamed of furnishing, the irony wasn't lost on me. They had no idea what they were walking into, and as the call went to voicemail, I allowed myself a quiet, almost imperceptible smile. Some doors closed for a reason, and sometimes those doors opened on a view you could never imagine. 5 years ago, I was 22, sitting cross-legged on my childhood bedroom floor, my laptop balanced on my knees. My heart raced as I rehearsed the pitch I'd written 100 times, the numbers and projections carefully aligned. I knew it sounded ambitious, maybe even crazy, but I believed in it. I believed in me. I walked into the living room where my parents sat, their Sunday morning ritual of coffee and the newspaper unfolding as usual. "Mom, Dad, I've been working on something important," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though it quivered. Dad looked up, raising an eyebrow, while Mom gave me that gentle, cautious smile that had always preceded a no. I opened my laptop, slides ready, charts, projections, potential clients, the whole plan laid bare. "I want to start my own consulting firm," I said. "I've done the research, drafted the strategy. I just need your support." Dad's eyes narrowed. "Sophie, this is a huge risk. You've got a stable job, you're barely starting your career. Why throw it all away?" Mom's hand reached for mine. "Sweetheart, we just don't want you to struggle. This idea, it's not realistic." I remember the sting, sharp and sudden, as if a window had slammed shut on my chest. My hands shook, not from fear but from the rush of disappointment. I swallowed hard, tasting the bitterness of tears I refused to shed in front of them. I looked down at the necklace my grandmother had given me years before, a small gold charm in the shape of a compass. "Follow your direction, no matter what anyone says," she had whispered. That tiny charm suddenly felt heavier than ever, urging me to choose a path they couldn't see, a path I had to forge alone. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the wooden floor. "I understand," I said softly, my voice trembling with restrained anger. "I'll do it myself." And I left, feeling the weight of rejection but also the spark of determination. That day, I promised myself I wouldn't just survive, I would thrive. I rented a tiny office above a coffee shop downtown, the kind with creaky floors and peeling paint, but it was mine. Every morning, I arrived before the sun, carrying my grandmother's compass necklace tucked under my blouse, a quiet talisman that reminded me why I had started. Nights stretched into mornings as I balanced spreadsheets, cold coffee, and endless calls to prospective clients. I was exhausted, often doubting whether I had the experience to survive on my own, but every small win felt monumental. It was during one particularly late evening, while I struggled to finalize a proposal for my first potential client, that I met Margaret Collins, a seasoned entrepreneur in the consulting industry. Margaret had a sharp gaze but a warm smile, and something about her made me feel seen. She listened patiently as I nervously outlined my plan, then leaned back in her leather chair and said, "You've got the drive, Sophie. But you need guidance, connections, and the courage to push past their expectations." Her mentorship became my lifeline. She introduced me to clients who trusted her judgment and believed in young talent. I learned to negotiate contracts, market my services, and present myself with confidence even when my stomach churned with self-doubt. There were nights I cried over numbers that wouldn't add up, or over proposals rejected despite all my effort. There were mornings I woke with a pit in my stomach, wondering if my parents had been right all along. But the wins, no matter how small, were addictive. The first client who signed a 6-month contract. The first profitable project, when my modest office suddenly became more than just a workspace, it was a symbol of my resilience. When I booked my first conference as a speaker, seeing hundreds of attendees listening to me, I felt the thrill of independence like a fire in my chest. All the while, I kept my parents in the dark. Social media posts were vague, and phone calls were carefully curated. They asked occasionally, "How's work going?" and I smiled politely, mentioning nothing of the contracts, the clients, the deals that were now worth more than I'd dared imagine. Letting them believe I was still struggling, or at least not flourishing, was a small, silent victory, a promise to myself that I wouldn't need their validation to succeed. I furnished my office with modest elegance, the walls lined with framed certificates, notes from clients, and personal touches that reminded me of my journey. Margaret's first encouraging email pinned above my desk, the compass necklace catching the sunlight, my first check framed on the wall. Every item told the story of a young woman who refused to let rejection define her. The Sophie Bennett that my parents had dismissed no longer existed. I had built a life, a business, and a reputation entirely on my own terms. And soon, they would see exactly who I had become. The knock at my office door sounded almost polite, but my heart skipped a beat. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. "Mom?"
"Dad."
I called, my voice calm, measured, masking the flutter of nerves beneath the surface. They stepped in cautiously, like visitors tiptoeing through a museum. Their eyes widened almost immediately, taking in the sleek glass walls, the polished oak desk, the abstract art I'd collected from local galleries. Every detail, my business awards neatly displayed, the framed contracts, the photos of clients who trusted me, spoke volumes before I even uttered a word. "Wow," Dad breathed, his usual confidence giving way to hesitation. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, eyes shimmering with something between awe and guilt. I gestured to the chairs. "Please sit," I said, my tone warm but deliberate. I let them absorb the room, the subtle yet unmistakable markers of success. And then I watched, savoring their reactions, the disbelief, the tiny flickers of shame, the dawning realization that the daughter they dismissed had not only survived but flourished. "I suppose you're wondering why I didn't call or tell you sooner," I began, letting the weight of my silence settle in the room. "The truth is, I didn't need your permission. I didn't need your approval. I just needed to believe in myself." Dad opened his mouth, then closed it again. Mom's eyes glistened, a mix of admiration and regret. I leaned back, letting my words land like deliberate steps. Sophie Bennett Consulting isn't small, as you might have assumed. We have over 20 clients nationwide, and our revenue last year exceeded 6 figures. The office you're standing in is entirely mine. I built it from the ground up. Every project, every deal, every late night, it was my choice, my risk, my success. They were silent, the weight of the truth pressing against them. The denial, the dismissiveness of years ago, felt almost tangible in the space between us. Mom's voice trembled. We had no idea." "No," I said gently but firmly, "you didn't. And that's why I let you think I was struggling. I wanted to prove to myself, not to you, that I could do it. And I did." Their shoulders slumped, a mixture of humility and pride settling in. For the first time, I saw them not as gatekeepers of my choices, but as witnesses to my resilience. I had grown while they hesitated. I had thrived while they doubted. I smiled, softening the tension. "And now," I continued, "there's a place for you here, if you're willing to learn, contribute, and respect the rules of this office." Their eyes met mine, a spark of hope mingling with surprise. The table had turned. The daughter they once thought fragile was now the architect of their future and mine. I watched them sit across from me, the same parents who had once dismissed my ambition, now leaning in, eager, cautious, almost nervous. The irony wasn't lost on me. Years of rejection, of being told I couldn't, of being protected from risk, had led to this very moment. I held the cards. "Here's the deal," I said, letting my voice carry both warmth and authority. "If you want to be part of this business, it's not about nostalgia or family pride. It's about respect, effort, and growth." I paused, letting the words sink in. Everyone starts at the bottom. Everyone earns their place. No shortcuts. Dad's jaw tightened. "Bottom? But this is not about what you think," I interrupted gently, smiling. "It's about what you can contribute. You want a role here? Then you'll work, learn, and follow the rules. No micromanaging, no undermining, no old patterns of dismissiveness. You want to succeed, you'll respect the structure." Mom nodded slowly, taking in my words. "And you'll guide us?" "Yes," I said. "I'll guide you. I'll mentor you. But the initiative must come from you. I won't tolerate excuses, resistance to learning, or expecting things to be handed over. You'll do the work, embrace growth, and act like you belong, not because you're family, but because you've earned it." I outlined specific roles based on their strengths. Dad, with his analytical mind, would manage operations under my supervision. Mom, with her empathy and organization skills, would lead client relations. Each role came with accountability, deadlines, and performance goals. Mistakes were allowed, but complacency and entitlement were not. I could see them processing, realizing this wasn't punishment, it was opportunity. I added, "This is also about emotional growth. You'll learn humility, patience, and respect in ways you didn't before. And if you succeed, it'll be because you've truly earned it, not because of blood ties." Dad exhaled, a mix of relief and admiration softening his usual stern expression. Mom's eyes glistened, and for the first time in years, I saw them eager to prove themselves, not to me, but to themselves. I leaned back, letting the shift in power settle naturally. Compassion met firmness. Authority met love. The daughter they once underestimated was now their leader, but not in a way that humiliated or punished. Instead, I was offering them a chance to grow alongside me, a chance they never gave me, but a chance I now extended, with conditions clear and fair. The compass necklace under my blouse felt warm against my skin, a reminder that courage and self-belief had led me here. I had the power, yes, but I also had grace. And that, perhaps, was the most important lesson I had learned along the way. Weeks passed, and slowly, steadily, my parents began to find their rhythm. Dad, once impatient and skeptical, now approached operations with a meticulous attention to detail, double-checking reports and offering insights that actually improved workflow. Mom, always nurturing but hesitant, blossomed in client relations, her warmth turning first-time clients into loyal advocates. Watching them adapt was surreal. The same people who had told me I was chasing an impossible dream were now standing shoulder to shoulder with me, learning humility, patience, and the value of hard work. They were no longer gatekeepers. They were teammates, part of a family I had carefully chosen to lead. Late one evening, I sat in my office, the city lights twinkling below. My fingers absent-mindedly touched the compass necklace my grandmother had given me years ago. "Follow your direction, no matter what anyone says." Those words had guided me through rejection, through sleepless nights, through self-doubt. They had carried me to this moment, a woman who had not only survived the storm but had built a life of strength, purpose, and grace. I reflected on everything, the sting of rejection, the lonely victories, the silent determination to prove myself not to them, but to me. Every step had mattered. Every challenge had shaped me into the leader, mentor, and daughter I had become. And now, finally, the relationships I valued were no longer tainted by past dismissals. They were real, grown, and earned. Mom peeked into my office with a cup of tea, smiling softly. Dad followed behind her, giving a small nod of approval. "You've built something incredible, Sophie," Mom said, her voice quiet but sincere. And we're proud, truly proud, this time without regrets. I smiled, feeling the warmth of their words, the satisfaction of the journey complete. The compass rested against my heart, a symbol of guidance, resilience, and the unshakable belief that sometimes the hardest paths lead to the most beautiful destinations. And as I looked out at the cityscape, I whispered quietly, more to myself than anyone else. I didn't need anyone to believe in me. I only needed to believe in myself, and that was enough.